The night I discovered another man's shoes beneath my bed, I didn't ask who they belonged to. I already knew. What I couldn't understand was why Nicole had invited him into the home I'd built for us. And when I saw the security footage, I realized the betrayal had started long before that night. My name is Kevin, and for 6 years, I believed I had the kind of marriage people quietly envied. Nicole and I weren't perfect, but we laughed together, planned vacations, argued about stupid things, and always found our way back. Our house wasn't luxurious, but every corner carried a memory we'd created together. Nicole was the person who made ordinary days feel important. She'd leave coffee beside my laptop before work and text me during lunch just to ask how my day was going. I thought those little things meant we were still connected. I never imagined they could become part of a carefully constructed lie. I worked long hours managing construction projects, so Nicole handled most things at home. I trusted her completely. If she said she was meeting a friend, I never questioned it. If she came home late, I assumed traffic was bad. Trust, I learned later, doesn't disappear all at once. Sometimes it disappears one unanswered question at a time. The first red flag was so small that I almost laughed at myself for noticing it. Nicole suddenly started dressing differently whenever I worked late. Nothing dramatic, just clothes she hadn't worn around the house before. When I complimented her, she'd smile and say, "I felt like looking nice today." I believed her. Then her phone became something I wasn't supposed to see. She started carrying it from room to room, even when she showered. One evening, it buzzed while she was cooking. She glanced at the screen, smiled, and turned it face down. I asked who it was. She answered too quickly. "Nobody important." That sentence stayed with me. Nobody important. Because people don't usually smile at messages from nobody important. That night, after Nicole fell asleep, I lay beside her staring at the ceiling. I wanted to believe I was being paranoid. I wanted to wake up the next morning and laugh about it. Instead, the distance between us felt enormous. A week later, Nicole told me her friend Sarah needed help moving some boxes. She left around 7 and said she'd be back within an hour. 3 hours passed. When she finally returned, I noticed something strange. There was a faint smell of men's cologne on her jacket. She saw me looking at it and immediately removed the jacket. "Everything okay?" I asked. Nicole nodded. "Why wouldn't it be?" I didn't answer. She walked upstairs, and I heard the bedroom door close. For the first time in 6 years, I considered checking her phone. I didn't. Instead, I sat alone in the living room, realizing I was becoming a stranger inside my own marriage. The next morning, I found a receipt beneath the passenger seat of Nicole's car. It was from an expensive restaurant across town. 2 entrees. 2 drinks. And the date was the same night she'd supposedly been helping Sarah move. When I confronted her, she stared at the receipt for several seconds before saying, "Sarah changed her plans?" "Then who were you with?" I asked. Nicole's expression hardened. "Kevin, seriously? Are you checking receipts now?" Her anger caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting an explanation anymore. I was expecting honesty. Instead, she made me feel guilty for asking. Somehow, by the end of the conversation, I was apologizing for being suspicious. That afternoon, I called Sarah. I didn't accuse her of anything. I simply asked whether she had needed help moving. There was a long pause. Then she said, "Kevin, I think you should talk to Nicole." That was all. She wouldn't explain. But the hesitation in her voice told me more than any confession could have. I came home early the following Friday. Nicole wasn't expecting me. Her car was in the driveway, but she didn't answer when I called. I unlocked the door and walked inside. Everything looked normal until I heard voices upstairs. One was Nicole's. The other belonged to a man I'd never heard inside my house before. I stopped at the bottom of the stairs. My heart started pounding so hard I could hear it. Then I heard Nicole laugh. Not the polite laugh she'd been giving me lately. It was the old laugh I remembered from when we first met. I moved quietly toward the bedroom, terrified of what I was about to see. Before I reached the door, the man's voice came through clearly. "Are you sure Kevin won't come home?" Nicole answered. "He never comes home this early." I froze. They weren't worried about being discovered. They were confident. They had done this before. And suddenly every late night, every strange message, every unexplained absence made sense. I pushed the bedroom door open. The man standing beside my window looked at me with absolute shock. Nicole screamed my name. Nobody moved. For several seconds, the three of us simply stared at one another. Then I noticed something that hurt more than seeing another man in my bedroom. He wasn't a stranger to Nicole. She looked at him like she loved him. "Kevin, please," she whispered. I laughed because I didn't know what else to do. "Please what?" I asked. "Please don't make this worse." She started crying. The man stepped forward and said, "I should leave." I looked at him and asked one question. "How long have you been coming into my house?" He looked at Nicole before answering. That glance told me everything. "About 4 months," he said. 4 months. I repeated the words quietly, almost trying to understand them. 4 months meant he had sat at my kitchen table, walked through my hallway, maybe slept in my bed, and Nicole had opened the door every single time. His name was Daniel. He worked with Nicole at a marketing company I'd heard her mention before. Suddenly, all those stories about late meetings had a face. I told Daniel to leave. He apologized, but I didn't want his apology. I wanted him gone. After the door closed behind him, Nicole and I were finally alone. I expected excuses. Instead, Nicole sat on the edge of the bed and said, "I didn't plan for this to happen." I asked her what that meant. She cried harder. "I was lonely, Kevin." I stared at her. "You were lonely?" I asked. "You could have told me." She looked down and whispered, "I tried." According to Nicole, she'd felt disconnected from me for almost a year. She said I was always working, always tired, always thinking about the next project. Maybe some of that was true. But loneliness didn't explain why she'd lied. It didn't explain Daniel. And it definitely didn't explain why she brought him into our home. Then she told me something I wasn't prepared to hear. Daniel hadn't been the first person she'd become involved with. There had been someone else before him. A brief relationship that ended months earlier. I felt the room spin. Daniel wasn't the beginning of the betrayal. He was simply the person who had been caught. I walked downstairs and sat at the kitchen table. That was where Nicole and I had once planned our wedding. Now every memory felt contaminated. She came downstairs and sat across from me. "Kevin, I know I hurt you." I looked at her and said, "You didn't just hurt me. You changed what our entire marriage means." For the first time, Nicole stopped defending herself. She admitted she'd been meeting Daniel for months. She admitted he'd been inside our home while I was working. She admitted she'd told him which nights I would be away. But then she said something that made my blood run cold. "There's something else you need to know." She reached into her purse and pulled out a small envelope. Inside was a photograph of Daniel standing beside a woman I'd never seen before. Nicole looked terrified. "This is his wife," she said. I stared at the picture. "Why are you showing me this?" Nicole swallowed and answered, "Because Daniel wasn't only lying to you." Apparently, Daniel had told Nicole he was separated. He wasn't. His wife had no idea about their relationship. Nicole discovered the truth only a few days before I caught them. She had planned to end things, but instead of telling me, she'd continued hiding everything. I realized the betrayal wasn't a single decision. It was hundreds of them. I asked Nicole why she hadn't left me if she was so unhappy. Her answer broke something inside me. "Because I was afraid," she said. "Afraid of losing the life we built." I stared at her and said, "You were afraid of losing our life, so you destroyed it secretly?" She couldn't answer. She just cried. That night, I slept in the guest room. I didn't sleep, really. I listened to Nicole walking around downstairs, opening drawers, crying, then going silent. Around 3 in the morning, my phone buzzed. It was Daniel. His message contained only one sentence. "You deserve to know why she chose me." I almost deleted it. Instead, I opened the message. Daniel claimed Nicole had told him our marriage was already over emotionally. He said she told him I was planning to leave her. I knew that wasn't true. But then he sent screenshots of conversations between them. Nicole had described our marriage in ways I'd never heard before. One message said, "Kevin doesn't see me anymore." Another said, "Sometimes I feel like I'm already alone." Reading those words hurt because part of me understood them. I'd been absent in ways I hadn't noticed. But then I saw the dates. Some messages were from nights when Nicole had kissed me goodnight and told me everything was fine. The next morning, I asked Nicole one final question. "Did you ever love me?" She looked directly into my eyes. "Yes," she said. "I still do." I shook my head. "Love isn't just what you feel. It's what you protect." She started crying again, but this time I didn't move closer. I couldn't rescue her from the consequences. I packed a suitcase that afternoon. Nicole followed me from room to room, begging me not to leave. She promised counseling, honesty, anything I wanted. At the front door, she grabbed my hand and said, "Kevin, please don't let one mistake erase 6 years." I looked at her and answered, "It wasn't one mistake. It was 4 months of choices." Then I walked outside. The house looked exactly the same from the driveway. Same windows. Same porch. Same little garden Nicole had planted in spring. But I knew I'd never see it the same way again. Sometimes a home doesn't stop being beautiful. You simply stop feeling safe inside it. Weeks passed. I moved into a small apartment and started rebuilding my routine. Nicole called often. Sometimes she apologized. Sometimes she cried. Eventually, she stopped calling. I later learned she had ended things with Daniel completely. His wife had discovered everything too. Their relationship collapsed almost as quickly as ours did. Months later, Nicole sent me one final letter. She didn't ask me to come back. She simply admitted that she'd spent months blaming loneliness for choices she was responsible for making. I read the letter twice, then put it away. I didn't hate her anymore. That was the strange part. I simply understood that forgiveness didn't mean returning. I used to think betrayal was about another person entering your relationship. Now I know it's about the moment someone stops protecting the trust you gave them. Nicole invited her lover into my home, but the real damage happened long before that door opened. And sometimes the hardest door to close isn't the one behind you. It's the one leading back to who you used to be. If you've ever ignored a red flag because you loved someone, you already understand why this story hurts so much. Sometimes your heart notices the truth before your mind is ready to accept it. And when that happens, don't ignore the feeling just because the truth might break your heart. The truth can hurt, but living inside a lie hurts longer. If this story made you question what you would do in Kevin's position, tell me in the comments. Would you forgive Nicole, or would you walk away for good? And if you want more emotional stories about love, betrayal, secrets, and the moments that change people's lives forever, subscribe. Because sometimes the truth is hiding behind the door you never thought to open.